Okay, everybody, it's 1 o'clock. My name is Deborah Tyler. I'm the Associate Executive Director of Professional Learning at NASSP, and I'm very excited about this afternoon. I want to welcome each of you to the Leadership Mashup Summer Virtual Book Study featuring Dr. Brad Gustafson and Dr. Bill Ziegler. Today's webinar and book talk will feature and focus on Chapter 3 of the book Renegade Leadership, and the chapter we'll focus on is the Renegade Code. Also, we'll be featuring Bill's book, Future-Focused Leaders, Relate, Innovate, and Invigorate for Real Education Change. And with that book, we'll be focusing on Chapter 5, Digital Leadership, Learning and Technology, Digital School Leaders Making a Difference for Students. As an association, we embrace the notion of creating coherence across leaders, levels, and organizations. We sincerely believe that all levels need to move from competing schools of thought to being unifiers in education. Thus, we are very pleased to introduce two conveyors of this bridge, Brad Gustafson and Bill Ziegler. Brad is an elementary school principal, author, and speaker. In 2016, Brad received the NASSP National Distinguished Principal Award representing the state of Minnesota, and in 2015, he also received the Digital Innovation and Learning Award. Brad believes that schools can be spaces where high levels of learning, creativity, and innovation thrive, but only when we prioritize relationships and a relevant, connected pedagogy. Bill Ziegler is a high school principal in Pennsylvania. He was recently honored as the 2016 Pennsylvania Principal of the Year and as the 2015 NASSP Digital Award winner. Bill believes that all school leaders have a unique responsibility to care for our greatest asset as a nation, our children. Welcome, Brad and Bill.
Thank you so much, Debbie. It's great to be with you guys and to be with all the principals from across the country.
This is happening. Bill, we're doing this.
Bring it, Brad. Let's go. Bring your A game and get ready, everybody, to get fired up.
What is a lowly principal from NAESP? You know, what did I do to deserve to get to hang out with you from NASSP? This is going to be awesome.
Well, I am thrilled.
I'm kidding, of course. We know that we're on the same page for kids, but this is what this is all about.
I totally agree with you, Brad. I'm looking forward to the partnership between elementary and secondary coming together to mash it up for school leadership, but mostly for our kids in schools and how we can help students be more successful.
Part of that, and we're going to keep this thing interactive, right? So not only is there the chat feature in the actual webinar, but we got our Twitter handles and actually the hashtag Leadership Mashup. So please tweet your questions. We want your voice to be part of this dialogue. And actually, we want to continue it. So if you see someone who is tweeting to Leadership Mashup, give them a follow as well.
I agree. We want to follow up with you, and we want to continue this conversation. Brad and I are going to stay on for a little bit with this hashtag after this closes out. So if you have any questions, we'll get to them right then. But we have Brad, just hold on. Fasten your seatbelts, everybody. We have an exciting breaking news coming in right now from Amazon. Here it goes. Are you ready, Brad? Boom! Take it away, Brad.
There we go. So this is kind of a cool deal just to increase kind of the interaction and actually build this web where we can connect with one another on the hashtag Leadership Mashup. If you tweet a shelfie, Bill, do you know what a shelfie is?
I do. It's when you hold a shell from the sea with a picture of you. Is that what it is?
No. It's like you take your book off the shelf and you get a photo of it, kind of like a selfie. So if you get a shelfie of yourself holding either Renegade Leadership or Future Focused Leaders, put it on the hashtag and you will be eligible for a $100 Amazon gift card. So one person from today's webinar is going to win that. Be sure to get your shelfie up before the end of the show. And if you do a picture that somehow has both books in it, we will count that as 2 entries, and you'll double your chance to win.
So get them moving and get them posted. I see Jessica Cabine already posted her shelfie. Yep. Double points. Bam. She's doing well there. Let's get those out. Thanks to school leaders again for that. We appreciate them donating that.
Yep. That's cool.
Brad,
so Bill, what are we doing here today? Like, what's the point?
The point, I think, is to make us all stronger school leaders so we can go back to school refreshed, rejuvenated, and just set our world on fire for students. We're going to work during this time to connect the dots and really look at, what's it from elementary to middle to high school, but also from Renegade Leadership to Future Focused Leaders, just working those.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Too often, Bill, here's what I notice in education, just visiting with different districts. You might have a Marzano school. You might have a school or a state or a district following the Danielson way, if you will. And then we kind of get into these buckets where we're not willing to drink other people's Kool-Aid or cross-pollinate. And the same as with books. I'm implementing Teach Like a Pirate this year. And this is all really good stuff. But what if these things could work together in a coherent fashion for teachers so they're not feeling like their heads are spinning and my principles all over the place? What if we could find that common ground regardless of the book? I mean, those are the barriers that Bill and I want to karate chop down today.
Yeah, we want to knock them down, blow them away, and really work to meld together pedagogy and leadership. It's about breaking down the walls, breaking down the barriers, and building up teaching, learning, and leading for all school leaders. So you ready to get started, Brad? I am.
The other thing I just want to say quick before we dive in, the difference between this virtual book study is we don't just want to summarize what we have in our books. There'll be a teeny bit of that, but really we want to dive deep, which is exactly why we chose 2 chapters, 1 chapter from each book. The point really here is what Bill just said, pedagogy and learning. It's not summarizing.
So let's get fired up and let's get ready to go. You ready to go, Brad? On 3, 2, 1, take it away, big guy. 1 minute book talk on your book.
All right, 60-second book talk, and this is that mini summary that we shared. So if you're not familiar with Renegade Leadership, the book, it's a book, almost a how-to guide on leading innovative schools. And I firmly believe that all kids, not just the kids at Greenwood Elementary, but every single kid in this amazing country and world really deserves an innovative learning experience. And let's face it, we're not there yet. This came to light here a year or 2 ago where I had a 4th grader, not in my school, not in our district, but she had made a comment saying, I got to use the Chromebook carts at school today, and this was midway through her 4th grade year, and she had never, not just in 4th grade, but I'm talking 3rd grade, 2nd grade, 1st grade, kindergarten, never touched one of those Chromebook carts. And that just had me thinking, the work we do as leaders, while we want to move forward the leadership and pedagogy in our schools, we want to do it systemically too, to get rid of this gap that's just not fair to our kids. So that's my minute book talk. That's what Renegade Leadership is all about. It's about all kids and all leaders leading for tomorrow.
Brad, I read your book. Actually, I read through it twice. Absolutely love it. Here's what I love about it. You make it real for me. And as an elementary principal, I can see how I can learn so much from you as a high school principal, from your elementary perspective. But what I love is Renegade Leadership's K-12. It's focused, it's high energy, it's practical. I love that. But future focused leaders, and what our goal here is future focused leaders relate, innovate, and invigorate for real educational change. And what we want to do is we want to, me and my co-author Dave Ramich, who's a middle school principal, we want to build schools where kids want to run to and not away from. Sadly, we talk about real change, but we fall short in implementing it. And what we wanted to do in our book here was to unpack for you easy-to-use strategies that you can immediately implement in your school and that are sustainable, not something that's trendy, but something that's long-lasting for change for students. And what we've embedded in this thing that I love are 2 things. One is in Chapter 1, there's a simulation. It's a digital simulation where you can work together either by yourself or with a team and walk through what the different problems are and respond to those problems. And the digital simulation walks you through the effects of your decisions. The second piece that by far is my favorite, and we featured Brad in this in one of our schools, is we highlighted and featured 20 school leaders from all across the country, really all across the world. We have an Australian principal from different walks of life, from urban schools, suburban schools, rural schools, wealthy schools, schools that are high economically, need support in that area. And what we've done is showcase what they're doing that works. So you can read their story, make it relevant to you, and then implement what they do in their in their own schooling. So,
and I'm glad I was hoping you'd mention those school bios, because I love the diversity of the schools and the levels and where they're from and how you actually articulate that. So regardless of the school or classroom you're leading, you can find something similar in the book and then relate to those people. Let's keep going. That was our summaries are done. Well done. Why we're here. We're going deep on 2 chapters, right? And in Renegade Leadership, it's chapter 3. So I'm just going to speak to, the main point of chapter 3, I guess. Maybe it's not the main point, but it's kind of where I'm going to intersect with future focused leaders. So this is Jackson Pollock, and he's an abstract expressionist. I took a lot of art classes in high school and just love creating, so this really resonated with me. But he was an innovator, very volatile personality too, if you've never heard of him. So he did a patented drip technique. He invented this new technique. You can see it on the screen there. But one day he had a guest visit his studio, and the guest accused Jackson Pollock of just his art being the product of chance, just kind of drippy luck, right? And that incensed Pollock. He was not happy. So he took his brush and he dipped it into I don't know if he had a can or a palette, but he got a dollop of paint on it and flung, not the brush, but just the dollop of paint with the flick of the wrist 50 feet across his studio apartment, hitting the doorknob square, effectively showing this unwanted guest the way out, saying, you think chance operation? No, this is precise. And that's what chapter 3 about Renegade Leadership is about. It's about a precise pedagogy. And as leaders, we don't have to make this stuff up. I call it the Renegade Code, and it just has 4 key things that if we focus on those things, like Pollock focused on what he was doing, we can realize real change. So what's your idea from the book that you think kind of collides with Renegade Leadership?
I think it's about collaboration and learning, what good teaching looks like. This picture right here, when you share about what good teaching looks like, this is a representation. 2 of our students who created a drone, built it from scratch in the school using the makerspace and the dirty lab that we have, where students can just go, tinker, have fun, and dig in. These guys wanted to build the first drone out of Pottsford High School, and they did it. And then they brought together the community to showcase their work in our tech showcase. We probably had 200-300 people watching their drone take off, and they just did some amazing things. I think chapter 5 for us is all about digital leadership, learning, and technology. And how can we take that to the next level? One of the things that I really like is figure 5.1, where the SWERI Digital Leadership Rubric. That's right. I didn't swear. It's called the SWERI Digital Leadership.
You're busting out an acronym on us, right?
Let
me just set this up here.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned it.
The elementary part of me wants to know how to spell this acronym. SWERI.
Yeah, you got it, Brad. And SW goes for switch because it's about just switching and just changing out what we do, going from paper to computer. And E is extend, extending the learning beyond the normal progression of what we do. And then finally, realize is the aha. It's the wow. I mean, taking it to the entirely new level of what it looks like. But at its roots, this word means real, so making the learning real. And then finally, innovate. And that's where we get the SWERI, about just innovating learning for change with our students.
Yep, and something tells me that your 2 young students there, that when they built that drone and shared it with an authentic audience, their school community, that it was real to them.
It was, and I was there when they flew it for the first time, and little kids like 3, 4, 7-year-olds are saying, I want to do that, and it empowers others. And I think that's what's really awesome is when they see learning and success, they model it and want to go after it.
Well, earlier in the show, Bill, you talked about creating schools where kids want to run to. I have no doubt that if you threw a stack of worksheets down in one corner of a classroom and drone building supplies with a teacher ready to facilitate that work and a supportive principal, I think I know which direction kids are going to run.
I totally agree. And Jason Markey, a good friend of mine, Digital Principal of the Year, he did that. He did the prosthetic challenge with his kids, where he gave them the guidelines on how to create a prosthetic for children in America and throughout the world that don't have a hand. And how awesome was it to see his kids make these prosthetics, send them out, and then make connections with the kids that actually they gave a hand to. So We need to make learning real for kids, and that's what it's all about.
Yep. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's keep firing away. So the main thing, really, if there's one thing you get out of Chapter 3 in Renegade Leadership, it's this path. I call it the Renegade Code. That is the pedagogy, and you'll see it's underpinned by relationships. If you try to do it without relationships, if you pull that element out, everything falls apart, and there is no foundation. And then we can build collaboration, student ownership, digital connectivity, and these learning experiences like creating drones and other work that's aligned to standards on top of those relationships. That's the real deal. That's the main thing. Bill, it reminds me real quick, and then we'll get to your main thing. I remember when I was in college, I'm always competitive. I love playing board games and stuff like that. But I was playing Monopoly with several friends and my future wife. It's amazing. She stuck with me after this Monopoly story. But this is really dorky. I used to read the Monopoly rules over and over and over again, just all growing up. I wanted to know everything about the rules so that I could play within the rules, follow the rules, but pick up on the nuances to take my game to another level. And some of my friends, they make assumptions about Monopoly, like that you can just trade in houses and hotels anytime, but you can't. There's a certain way you have to do it. So they've kind of sworn off playing with me. But the reason I bring that up, and I do go into it a little more coherently in the book in Chapter 3, it's when we learn the rules really, really well, we can kind of apply them like artists. We can, with integrity, use discernment on how the rules can work best for our kids as we move forward into the future. And for me, the artistic brush, the lens that helps me leverage, what I want to do is this Renegade Code. So that's the main thing.
Brad, love the Renegade Code. One thing is, don't pass go and don't collect your $100, because by the time you read through the rules, I would have already taken all your hotels. But anyway.
Oh, I can't believe you just went there. Did he just go there?
I just went there.
We need I sense an alternate hashtag popping up here, like Renegade Monopoly players or something like that.
Or hotel extraordinaire, because I just collect them all. But anyway, I love what you talk about and how different we are as leaders. What you point out is really unique, because think about what you just said. You read through the instructions and the directions first. There's people here sitting listening going, I am right with you, Brad. And then there's a guy like me that going, reading directions? My wife does that, and she tells me what's in there. I'm just going right to the game. And that's...
Well, you know what else is, Bill, you know what else is happening? And this is why we wrote our books. It's people are also playing by some antiquated rules, a pedagogy of the past, when in reality kids need a relevant, connected pedagogy that actually factors in on a reliable basis how to use digital tools and digital means of collaborating to propel their learning forward. So it's almost as if we're playing a 1950s version of Monopoly, but yet kids are looking at these pieces in this connected world thinking, what's up with this?
I agree with you. And I know this is hard to believe a principal is saying this, but almost we need to break the rules of the old and engage in new rules that allow innovation and design for students. I think,
right. But it requires leadership, Bill, because so Renegade Leadership is positive deviance, where we're doing this together in a way that makes sense to people, and they can all buy in and go further together, as opposed to just having fragmented chaos and dissidence. This is about painting a brighter future, but doing it together in line with district vision, state standards, and again, that's the role of pedagogy. All right, you got me all fired up here. I want to take you down at Monopoly. I want to beat you at Monopoly, but we better hear, what's your main thing?
So future-focused leaders, really in this chapter, we're looking at what innovation builds empowerment. And as school leaders, we need to step outside the old boundaries of how we used to do schooling and really just jump into what innovation looks like, creating a new learning environment that students are engaged in, that they're creating, designing, publishing. Why can't our kids today be the real problem solvers? I'll give you an example. A girl in my school who's done a lot of work in mental health throughout our community and actually on Capitol Hill with our Congress asked me, she said, Dr. Z, can I host an assembly on mental health where I share my struggles and I share what I'm doing? And then I meet with the students afterwards who want to talk, and with our guidance counselors to provide them the support. And, I gave her a voice and allowed her getting up there on that assembly. That's innovation. Innovation isn't necessarily buying a 3D printer and printing out something. That can be innovation also, But innovation is in the thought process. It's in how we act. It's in what we do. And it's in creating a new idea. And really our goal here is, with Chapter 3, is to challenge you to step into the next level and get connected, create a personal learning network, professional learning network. I actually put some.
Bill, I want to pause for a second, because what you said is so profound. And if there's one thing that people walk away with, I think that could be the thing. So I'm glad that was your main thing. You don't need an iPad or a Chromebook to be innovative. All you need to do is think differently. So, for example, you having a student take ownership of a student assembly, whether it had technology or not, that's the kind of innovation. That's alignment with Renegade Leadership, right? We can just look at the student ownership piece, which is part of the code. That's huge.
Yeah, because so many times when we think innovation, we instantly run to technology and digital learning. It doesn't have to be. Another example is we decided we're a No Place for Hate school, and so we asked our students to create a play around the No Place for Hate, and it was student-directed, student-led, and our community came out and saw it. Innovative idea, has nothing to do with technology. It's how we think differently. And Brad, I think we need to think differently as school leaders. We need to work and think differently, because our kids deserve the best of us. I love what Todd Maloney says.
Yeah.
With kids deserve it. They deserve our best all the time.
Yep. Let's go to the next slide, because we're going to talk about before and after. Like, what did this look like before, which our before might in some cases be today, and then the tomorrow's better. What did this look like 10 years ago? The nuance to what we just talked about, and maybe this is pushed back a little bit, Bill, as much as innovation does not have to be tech-laden, tech-rich, if it's never, or if it's absent technology, that's not fair to kids either. Technology shouldn't be a novelty either.
I totally agree.
My before and after, what did it previously look like, just so people can begin to apply this stuff in their leadership worlds and roles. So growing up, Bill, I don't know if you ever did this, but you spin a globe as fast as you can. You trace your finger along the edge.
Loved it.
Okay, good. As the globe slowly stops, what we played was, where we would live, where we would get married, all that type of stuff. That was how I honestly connected with the world. That was it. I maybe was on a plane once or twice in my life growing up. But now, fast forward to today, what does that look like today? Well, I'll tell you what it looks like. It looks like, if you're reading a story that has kids from South Africa and the stuff that they're working on in their classrooms, then it means dialing them up via Skype and connecting. And we've had teachers do that, and not doing it in a novel way where it's like a once-a-year thing, but just connecting with the world and learning from others and developing that empathy and getting a glimpse into their window and world on a really regular basis as a matter of pedagogy.
Yeah, Brad, it's very similar for me. When I was a kid, growing up, field trips, we would go to the local ones here in Philadelphia. I saw the Liberty Bell so many times as a kid, and didn't get out. I didn't get beyond Pittsburgh probably, which is about as far west as I didn't get as a kid. But I remember my field trips were slideshows that my teacher would roll that little slide through and show it to us as a class. What's awesome about technology is that now with augmented and virtual reality, we can take kids anywhere in the world. Discovery VR will actually go in, and they have virtual reality tours of the North Pole, and you can go up there and see what's going on in the North Pole, or you can go down to a cave down in South America. There's no limitations, and that's where we do talk about innovation. It doesn't have to include technology, but I think if we fail to use technology, we're going to lose kids, because virtual reality.
And let's be honest, systemically, we are failing to integrate it in a seamless manner. There might be pockets of practice and innovation happening in schools and classrooms across the country, but systemically, there are haves and there are have-nots, and it really starts with leadership. Leaders are the fuel to any initiative, and they're also the brakes.
Love the brakes and the fuel comment, because I think we have to be the charge and the model. Another piece with us as school leaders, we have to model it. So that means we need to be in learning about it, doing it ourselves, modeling it in front of teachers. And modeling it means that we're going to make mistakes and we're going to have successes. And you got to create a culture, and that's what that next slide. What's that?
You just said something. I heard you say the modeling piece. So I want to if you could go back just one.
Sure.
To the before and after. so I gave the classroom globe example as kind of a student learner, but as a leader, I mean, I better be modeling before and after as well, right? So you had me thinking staff meetings of the past we're largely isolated. You know, we're working on important stuff together, but what does that look like tomorrow, or what could it look like? You know, one of the things we did this past year, Bill, was we had 3 or 4 authors visit our school virtually. You know, we had some Skype rooms set up, and teachers just got to select. So teachers had the choice and the voice with what author they wanted to connect with wherever they were in the world. And the only complaint I really heard from that experience was it was too hard to choose. You know, some people wanted to be with multiple authors and books at the same time. So that subtle change, that subtle shift from before and after, you know, isolated staff meeting to a more connected experience where the principal doesn't have to be the expert. It's really empowering staff and your staff leadership, and then as appropriate, inviting other experts in to further inspire and empower staff can and should be done to model, right?
Absolutely. And I think as school leaders, we have to be willing to take that risk in front of our teachers. Because, Brad, have you ever done it and it failed? Have you ever modeled tech and it just fell flat on its face? Have you ever done that?
Yeah, a few times.
Yeah, so have I.
A few thousand times.
A few thousand times. And the issue is we don't give up, but we're resilient working through that. And what that shows is our teachers, it shows obviously a growth mindset where we're going to work through those issues and still accomplish that. It is so critical that we no longer spin the globe, but now that we get kids in learning about the cultures and seeing firsthand what's going on in those cultures. That's how we build empathy. That's how we build compassion. I love what Darren Elwine's doing in Harrisburg, South Middle School in Harrisburg, South Dakota. Yeah, yep. South Dakota. I mean, he's up in South Dakota, but he's making it happen. He is having his kids work with a school in Norway to clean up our oceans from plastic water bottles. And they're creating and designing a real thing that will filtrate plastic out of the seas and the ocean. So it's about modeling it and going after it. We need to hunger for that stuff as a passionate leader.
Yep, good stuff.
It's about creating a culture there. Wouldn't you agree with that, Brad?
Right. Well, yeah, because without a culture, then you just use Darren Elwine, a principal in South Dakota, as an example. If it's not about culture, then Darren's story and our story and the amazing work our teachers are doing, they're just isolated experiences that kids get, and then maybe they dissolve and move on. But when these isolated silos become part of the shared celebration, shared vision, the fabric of the DNA of a school that's learning and moving forward, then these things start to build and grow, and the expectation gets even more child-centered. So what are the behaviors, Bill, that have these pockets of innovation move from being just that, isolated instances of excellence, to something that all kids and staff members can bake on?
I think the first thing is the leader has to have a connection. It has to have a professional learning network, but it's really about getting them out and creating a culture that allows for risk-taking, so allows teachers to take a risk and allows students to take risk. But also... Give
me an example. I can't let you off the hook that easy, Bill. That sounded good and important. Give me an example of how you do that.
So I'll give you an example. Our librarian, right, she worked with our yearbook team to design a Erasmus augmented reality yearbook. And she worked really hard. And, you know, she had the goal of doing this, and you didn't make it in time for the deadline this year because she couldn't figure it out. I got a little busy on teaching her the app. But this year, we are committed to taking that to the next level. You know, when things don't go as planned, don't give up. Don't get angry. Keep pushing through and keep working for greatness for our students. Just like that example with my librarian, I came alongside, supported her, and I said, hey, listen, you know what? I should have been there more for you. Let's sit down together. I'll walk you through it. I'll show you how to do it. And next year, we're committed to having a yearbook that's engaging more than just on the pages of the print.
What you just said connected to the Renegade Code and that pedagogy, your innovation and your work with your librarian or media specialist, there was something very vulnerable and human about it. The relationship really is going to move that forward, because if I heard you come, you know, if you were my principal and came to me with that level of support and just kind of owning the fact that maybe you could have even done more to help, then we're on common ground and we're doing it together. I mean, you're creating culture with every single conversation you have, Bill. And in that instance, it was a culture of innovation, and this is important enough where we're not going to let it go. We're going to keep moving forward.
Yeah, and the other one this year, I challenged that same librarian. She runs a makerspace and a breaker space in our library where they take old parts and they make robots out of use, like old VCR players, DVD players, things like that. I challenged her to take learning away from just making robots for fun to changing lives. And she is pumped about this. I gave her the prosthetic challenge. And our school's committed this year to creating a prosthetic hand for a child that can't afford one or doesn't have the health care to be able to get one, really making a difference. I think that's the other thing, Brad. We have to create a culture that solves problems that are bigger than our school, right? We, as teachers,
absolutely,
we give problems that are just solved, that are on paper. Why can't our kids solve real-world problems right in our community? I'll give you an example. One of our teachers is doing a challenge-based learning, and he's having the kids create funding to give backpacks to every single kindergarten kid who can't afford backpacks and school supplies. Making a difference, solving a real-world problem, making it happen.
Yep.
So that culture has to we have to create a risk-free or a safety environment. I love to say safely dangerous, right? I love to live safely dangerous, right to the edge of falling off, but safe enough that I'm not going to. I think we need to
because if we're safely, because the opposite of that would be safely safe. If we're leading safely safe, we will be the best leaders who maintain the status quo ever. And we know that's not going to serve our kids. When I heard the few examples you just gave, Bill, the common denominator in almost every story you just shared was a conversation. So connecting that directly to what are the leadership behaviors that propel culture forward, you don't have to be techie. You don't have to be innovative as labeled by yourself or others, but you just have to have conversations that count and that push yourself and push others. So in Renegade Leadership, here's another connection between our books. I share this story where I was in an eval meeting with a teacher. I forget if it was an end of the year one or whatever, it doesn't matter. But for me, it's humbling and very difficult to help amazing teachers think differently or get better because I don't feel like I'm good enough. Bill, it's like, what do I have to offer this incredible teacher? And I need to get over that, and I try. But one of the ways that I do that is just developing dream big goals with all teachers, even your all-star teachers who are already dreaming very big for kids. So I remember one year I had a few dream big goals, and we shared them, and we talked, and I kind of forgot about them just a little bit. The next year, I met again with this teacher, and she was already in it, so inspiring. And then she had taken her pedagogy, the approach she was using, and it was more connected in a sense where the amazing best practices with regard to literacy and such were happening, but they were also connected to other kids around the world around standards and like the global read aloud, Purnell Ripp's global read aloud, things like that. And I asked the teacher, like, what made you think to do this? This is incredible, just seeing how students were responding. And she said, and I felt like an idiot after she said it, she's like, well, you did. Remember, you gave me these goals at the end of last year, and I'm trying them. And in that moment, I just thought, like, principals can support so much, and just by not necessarily having the answer, but encouraging someone to take a risk and building on the awesome things they're doing, teachers then can figure out what makes sense for them and their kids, but just having that conversation can create culture.
Yeah, and Brad, I love what you said there. And think about how maybe our job is to plant the seeds of innovation, right, and allow them to sprout with our teachers. Because what you did was you planted a seed, you forgot about it, but the teacher and they came back around and implemented that change in innovation. And if we can be dreamers and seed planters along the way of innovation, it will inspire teachers to embrace that and jump on it. I really like one of your codes, experiential learning, right? It's all about the learning. You say in the book, and I quote, the process of learning should ignite a fervor and curiosity for more learning. That's really what we're all about, I think, as school leaders. And what we need to be is to ignite a fervor and curiosity for more learning. I think that's the kind of culture we need to create, one that creates a fervor, a fire, a passion for curiosity and more learning.
Bill, I feel like yelling amen and raising the roof and doing all kinds of fist bumps, because what you just said is what we want as leaders, what we should do for the people we're serving. and what we want our teachers to do for kids. We don't want to necessarily inspire a kid to ace a test, although that's, achievement is very important. But we want to inspire kids to achieve at a high level and then ask new and different questions and start inventing their future. And compliance is not going to get us there. And the same thing in staff meetings. If we're going in and teachers are just tolerating our staff meetings, for example, or places where they should be learning and leaving with more inspiration and questions and resources at their disposal, not just longer to-do lists, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If there's one,
you got me all fired up. You got me all fired up here, Bill.
I am fired up. If there's one takeaway, I love this. Page 36 of your book, under Experiential Learning, ignite a fervor and curiosity for more learning. That's the one sentence that we could take away as school leaders. We could really make a change that's going to really design those schools that kids want to run to and not away from.
I feel like you just upped your level by quoting a page from my book, so I'm going to do the same, Bill. On page 71, I mean, honestly, right when I was reading your book, in permanent marker, I underlined on page 71 where you quoted Ian Jukes, and it just says, we have to be willing to immerse ourselves in kids' world, right? For me, pedagogy must be in their world. If our practices, if our leadership practices don't mirror this amazing connected world where relationships are important and we have all these opportunities to connect with others in a relational way, if that's not happening, there's no fervor for learning. We're just doing what we did yesterday and 10 years ago, and that's not fair to our staff or kids.
Yeah, we are just going through the motions at that point. That's why we need school leaders that are brave enough to do what it takes to make real change in their schools. And
Bill, when you say brave enough, it's not about brave enough to break the rules. That's not what we're talking about.
No, not
we're
at all.
talking about the moral courage to learn.
Yeah, not just learn, Brad, but learn and share that learning with others, right? So getting out there with your teachers, learning with your teachers together, learning with your kids together, and planting the seeds of innovation throughout your school. Here's another piece I think we failed to mention. If we don't help fund these projects as school leaders, that we're not willing to put dollars behind our voice and our dream and our passion, it will fall short. And that's where I think school leaders, we have to get creative in funding, and we share that in our book, how you can do that, some great ways, like donorschoose.org, a website everybody needs to learn to get a project in your school funded. Great way to do it.
Bill, I got to push back. I got to push back a little bit because, like, for me, I had this image where I was with you. It's not about just leaders holding pom-poms cheering this on. I think we need to open up pocketbooks. But when I get nervous when I hear people talk about grants, because for me that's not enough. So I'm going to give you my counterpoint, and then I want to hear kind of what your thoughts are. We actually started a line item in our budget, and it's not huge, but at least it's a starting point, a line item for innovation. So when a teacher comes and has an idea, I don't have to wait until the end of the year and hope I have extra money. I can either meet them halfway on the idea from this budget or maybe even make it happen right away. And then we've even evolved it into this, we call it one-sentence grants, where a teacher can email me just in a sentence, like, here's the difference I want to make for kids, here's what I need. So it takes 10 seconds of their time, and most often we can make it happen. And they're asking for things that are in line with district and school vision. So help me understand. What about a teacher who doesn't have time for a grant, or if they need more or different support?
Yeah, first of all, that's a great idea. And I do the same thing. I don't have actually an innovation thing, but if a teacher wants to do something, I find money to make it work. But there are school settings and there are places that may not have the funds within their budget, right? And I think donorschoose.org is a great way to get money and get it quick. You don't have to wait a long time. And the other thing is, if these projects are that awesome, why not get businesses looking at them? Why not, as a school leader, be bringing in the community to celebrate the work and to help fund the work of students? I think your idea is phenomenal, and it's something I want to do. And I think that, that with leveraging the community and other resources, you can do things that are bigger than your budget. You can blow your budget out of the water. And that's where I think bringing in communities and schools, I love what the Fair School does up in Minneapolis. They're close to Target, the headquarters for Target, my wife's favorite shopping center. I don't know about you, Brad, but they go into their school and they fund a number of their projects. Walmart does that. Home Depot will do it. Lowe's will do it. So check out some of those ways to also get some funding.
Bill, I want to circle back to something I heard you say a second ago before we get to the next slide. You talked about modeling, or you alluded to it, and this picture that we're staring at on creating culture, it's some 3D builds that some kids made. The backstory on those simple keychains is I read a blog post, and have you heard around New Year's people come up with their one word for the year?
Yes.
And it's kind of more inspiring than a resolution. It's a word that kind of guides your thinking, and you celebrate and you keep revisiting. So I read this post, and I thought our staff might be interested. I sent it out, and a few weeks after I shared that blog post, and I forget who wrote the original post, so I apologize for that, but I was kind of hoping for feedback or something, and I didn't hear a peep. And I was kind of thinking, oh, that was a fail. But then I noticed, I walk into our art class, and kids were designing, and this was maybe 3 weeks after, these amazing, vibrant one-word projects, and they were also personalized. Like one girl's word I still remember was flow, and another, I guess you can see from their 3D builds.
Yeah.
But the thing is, then I go into the tech lab a week later. This is without me saying anything. I'm just noticing, and our tech teacher has kids creating their one word. So the whole point of that story is there is value in a leader modeling and sharing what they're learning. I was learning about this one word thing. I was also kind of modeling that I read blogs and I share with people that I think might care about the content. And we can't assume just because we don't see the ripples from throwing those positive stones in our learning, they're happening, right, whether we notice them or not. And I just happened to stumble upon and notice the ripples a little late.
I agree with you, Brad. And that is all about modeling, because you're in there digging in, looking at the blogs. And, you know, I think many of your teachers, if it's like mine, they're not digging into blogs, looking at those things. I mean, a number of them are, but some of them aren't, and they need you to plant that seed for innovation. And, you know, I love our slide here. What are leaders modeling well, and where are they falling short, and why? What do you think, Brad? What do you think about that?
Well, let's do an interactive kind of audience thing here. So how many people listening have ever picked up a mop in the cafeteria, or a broom, or a rag, or just maybe even some litter in the hallway? Think about that. And I'm going to guess that like 100% of principals have done something like that. And I know the thought process. Now, I'm a bit of a germaphobe. I'm not a huge fan of picking up like toilet paper and paper towels that are near the bathroom area, but I do it, right? And I do it not only because it's the right thing to do, but I do it because I want people to see that that's what we do, right? That's the culture. It's not about role or position. We are all serving kids, and we want this to be a good environment. Make sense? Now, the second part of that, Bill, is of the 100% of leaders who have done that, I'm quite sure, how many of them are blogging?
Great
and I'm
point.
willing to bet that the percentage went down, right? So the question now in this 21st century context, in this future-focused leaders, renegade leadership context is, why? Why are we so quick to model picking stuff up and pitching in with a broom or a mop, but why won't we force ourselves to do what our kids need us to do and start blogging and reflecting and using social media as learning media? That should be 100% thing.
It should be a standard. And, you know, Brad, you're modeling that. You do a podcast called, I think it's Unearthed, Brad. Is that what it is?
Yeah, yep.
And I love how it's not just a blog. It's you do a blog, you do a podcast, you're on the Voxer, you're on Twitter, and it's like triangulating your learning and your leadership to others. I think we also have a responsibility to invest in the lives of other school leaders. And I think, Brad, one of the things that I really appreciate that you're doing is you're doing that on a consistent basis with your podcast, with your blog. And we should be developing that leadership capacity with our teachers and doing that as well.
Right. And the thing that I've noticed, and your experience might be different, but, and I always say model, not mandate. I can go to a staff meeting and say, we're all going to be on Twitter. And I can go to a principal conference and say, you need to be on Twitter. But what good is that if I'm not immersed in the learning and failing first, and then able to have more empathy as I'm actually able to show people the value and support them in their questions. So that's the whole point. That's what Bill and I, when we threw this slide up, that's what we were hoping to show. We've got to be modeling this stuff. I know I want to hear you highlight your book, but I'll say in Renegade Leadership, It's a how-to manual on starting all of these things. And I would encourage you, don't do it all. Pick one or two things, like starting a podcast or a video series with students, just sharing their learning. Pick one of those things and do it, and you will feel your capacity growing, but not just as a learner. You'll actually be able to lead digital learning because you're doing it on a regular basis yourself.
And Brad, why couldn't one of the people, the school leaders on here today, be the next Mashup? You know, join us in the Mashup in the future.
That's a great idea.
I think it's about making it real. One thing that I did, I tried to mandate all my teachers get on Remind, which is a texting service, and it was I wanted to have them get on so I could give them updates and everything. They weren't getting on. And then what I did one day was I for those who were on, I sent out a remind message that said, hey, feel free to cut out early today on Friday after the buses leave. Wow. You want to talk about increasing membership on Remind and the impact and capacity? I had teachers coming to me begging for the code. The reason I share that story is it doesn't always work at first, but you got to get creative and find ways to make it work. And you get others to buy in because they want to buy in, not because you want them to buy in. And
yes, and you know, the modeling, you know, it's not just about creating the digital content. It's also about the questions we ask. So here's a super quick example. A lot of times when I share with teams or districts or whatever, I'll ask a question, and it's not as loaded as it sounds. Would you rather have every classroom that's built from this day forward, so whether it's a new school or renovation, should those classrooms have green screens or world maps?
Isn't that good?
Think about that for a sec, because in a lot of classrooms, that decision is automatically made, and I don't know if it's a superintendent or an architect. I don't know who is deciding that most classrooms have world maps, but think about that for a second. Now, again, I'm just asking that question so we can talk and have the conversation. I'm going to fully own, because I've received some healthy discourse and pushback on Twitter before from people who say, the content is so important that, you know, and they're incensed when I start talking about process and pedagogy, and I'm very glad that they do that, because it keeps me grounded in how do we have a creationary pedagogy and prioritize content. So there's alignment and vision. You know, we have to have both. So maybe it's not an either-or thing. Maybe it's not green screen or world map. Maybe it's just asking the question like, where's the green screen? Or if it's not about green screen, where is the space and the priority where kids and staff can create the future and show their learning in a different way as opposed to a fill-in-the-blank manner?
Brad, I so appreciate that. Glen Robbins in New Jersey, he just painted an entire classroom with green screen, which is, you know, it's an interesting thing, great model to do. You also remind me of Hall Davidson from Discovery, that, and what he said was, why not have an Alexa, which is Amazon's artificial intelligence, in every classroom so they can answer the Google questions for the students, and the students then have to create and design. So those, you know, the facts that they need to learn, they can get them right there. But get students creating, designing, doing green screening on video, touchcast, things like that. That's how we really get students engaged. And with Future Focused Leaders, what we do is we provide a step-by-step guide for school leaders on how they can do that, how they can engage kids to solve today's real-world problems. Brad, we might want
Sounds like we have a lot of common ground here.
We
Bill,
do.
what would you say? You know, what's really come to light as something that overlaps heavily, that people can walk out of here like saying, you know what, both books nailed this. This is one thing I can commit to.
Without a doubt, relationships and collaboration, right? So that collaboration piece is so key. At Future Focused Leaders, that's the heartbeat of what we do with school leaders and helping them go step by step on how to become a future focused leader. It aligns perfectly with your code about ownership. You know, we need to approach leadership with the goal of increasing learner capacity. That's what you say. That's what we're passionate about. But I think the overarching goal here is collaboration. We can't do this alone anymore. There's no silos as principals. Even Batman had Robin. We need to find other people to come alongside us, Brad, just like you, to inspire us, encourage us, you know what, and kick us in the pants when we need to be kicked in the pants to get to the next level.
Right. I think one thing leaders might not be aware of until they experience it and realize it, their Robin might be on the other side of the country. and they just haven't found that shared space or connected yet, whether it's through Twitter or Voxer or whatnot. So here's my advice, because Bill, my common ground is actually the same as yours. It's collaboration, but we both, I know we agree, it's not just the face-to-face, it's the time in between by also leveraging digital tools to stay connected and learn. I would just encourage everyone listening, no matter how connected you are, identify one person that you'd like to collaborate with who's not in your building or district and that you haven't collaborated with before. Just have a dream big goal and reach out in some way, shape, or form and say, I would love to learn from you, and maybe even get you in front of staff somehow, whether it's through a Skype or something, and just have that type of learning and muddle through it, even if you've never done this type of connected learning at a staff meeting before, because what we model in our staff meetings, whether it's flipped leadership or whatever practice you're using, best practice, innovative best practice, that will start to trickle down and through the DNA of your school. So if your staff meetings look and feel a lot like they did 10 years ago, this is a perfect opportunity to recommit, recalibrate, and get your future-focused Renegade leadership on.
Brad, you pointed out something so important that we mentioned in our book. What you focus on grows. So as school leaders, it's time for us to focus on the right things. Let's get to the sleeper points. What did we miss? Let's hear from some people. What do you think we missed, Brad? All
right, I'll be checking the hashtags. So at this point, Bill and I would love to hear questions, pushback, things you maybe picked up on from one or both of the books. And I'll just, as people are starting to tweet, I'm just going to share a quick one, Bill, and then I'll hear yours, and then we'll get to the people. The thing in both books that we want to make sure people don't miss is, again, I know we've said this, but it's not about the shiny object or the technology in and of itself. So it's not simply about having Google Cardboard or virtual reality in your school. It's about the student ownership and eventually getting to that place where kids are creating it, not just consuming it. And there's a big difference there. So the example that I like to share is in our school, yes, we've had Google Expeditions come out. Yes, we've used Google Cardboard, but we also invested in it's called a 360 Fly camera, where our kids and staff now have the capacity to create their own virtual reality content. Okay, and we're relatively new on this journey, but we have several videos created from the art room to Fayette to technology to Foursquare and Recess and book fair virtual tours. We're in a position now where our kids can create it, and when they can create it, they can begin to start dreaming bigger and inventing the next technology instead of just merely always consuming something someone else came up with. So for me, that's a big sleeper point. I feel like we both did a pretty good job of mentioning it in the book, but we don't just want people to gravitate towards tech. We want staff and kids empowered to create with tech. How about you, Bill?
I'm right there with you, Brad. And mine, I think, is future design learning environments. We need to look at what's the learning environment in our school look like, and we need to provide students and teachers an environment that looks like the future, that looks innovative and provides innovative spaces, more places to write on the walls, more green screens, more collaboration spaces. And it's really, why aren't we moving? We have a responsibility as school leaders to push our school toward innovation, to really lead our school toward innovation. And, getting kids out there, using it, engaging it, and having students solve real-world problems. So, I think the other piece in my book, the sleeper point, is avoid the pitfalls of digital leadership. Don't get sucked into what's on the cover of a magazine or something you just heard on Twitter. Make sure it follows your school's mission and your school's values and aligns with what your school wants to do. Otherwise, you're going to always be going down these rabbit trails. Make sure your innovation is strategic. Don't take it because it's the latest trend or it's something savvy. Use it because it's going to take students to the next level.
Yep, we're going to be giving away a $100 Amazon gift card here in just a second, but I want to share a couple sleeper points that people have shared. So we got Daniel Gridley. It's about relationships, and that also incorporate the modeling, the collaboration, but here's the part of his tweet I love the most. It's one flower at a time. Ooh, we don't always have to think system, just one relationship, one decision point, one person growing at a time. That's how it happens. Jen Olson talked about relationships and underscored it too. So I think that's a sleeper point for us as digital leaders. When we focus more on the relationship, the device and stuff, that stuff will happen as long as it's a priority. The converse is not always true. When we focus more on the iPad, that doesn't guarantee that the relationship will happen. So we have to keep our priorities intact.
I agree. I think we talked a lot about staying connected, but you know, Brad, I know I work to stay connected. You do also. In my book here on Future Focus Leaders, I put a list of K-12 leaders and district leaders that you can follow on Twitter and learn great things from. Edu heroes of the world, in my opinion. People that I've just learned priceless things from.
Nice. I'll tweet out my list, and it'll just a quick list people can follow on the hashtag Leadership Mashup. We'll push the button, you'll be able to follow the whole list. But in Renegade Leadership on page 47, I have several bulleted items how to practice this connected learning. Things from back channels at staff meetings, Voxer, podcasting, blogging, and I won't read the whole list, but it actually gives some ideas and some starting points for those. Brad,
it's time. We need to hear from the audience. What's going on? Let's hear some questions, thoughts, reactions. Let's hear something.
Let's do that. I'm going to flip our order around. Let's give away the goods. Let's give away this Amazon $100 gift card. And then Bill and I will actually stick around a little bit on this leadership mashup hashtag and interact, and we can eventually even slow channel it and stay connected too. So I'm going to go in, Bill. I saw, and by the way, it's not too late to enter because Bill and I are not very good at, or I'll speak for myself, I'm not very good at multitasking. So I'm going to check the hashtag. If you still have a shelfie, meaning you have a picture of my book, Bill's book, or both, throw it up to the Leadership Mashup hashtag and register. And I'm going to make sure I got everyone, and then we'll pick a winner.
Yeah, there's a lot of good tweets out here, Brad. It's awesome to see. I'm seeing 2 shelfies so far. Do we have more?
Yeah, some of them are kind of hybrid. They're taking screenshots of the webinar that's happening with. So we're counting. We're going to count paper books and the virtual digital pictures of the books. So
make sure you get your shelfie on so we can select you.
All right. Jen, that is so funny. Jen's like, I'm famous. Jen, you were famous before we mentioned you.
While we're doing this, if you have some questions, Debbie, you want to get some questions up.
There you go.
What do you got, Brad? Bring it to us.
Well, I feel like there are 7 legitimate entries, and that's or maybe it's 8. I think one person for sure had the double. So give me a number 1 through 8.
7.
All right. Now you go ahead and take questions, and I'm going to count things to make this.
Debbie, what kind of questions do we got?
So, I mean, you brought up some really good points during your presentation. You know, some of the biggest takeaways for me was the importance of creating a culture that solves problems bigger than the school. And so really understanding, you know, that we need to look outside ourselves and really push looking for global solutions. And I think most important for us as an association is being able to take the responsibility to invest in the lives of other school leaders. To me, you know, that's what our association needs to be about, and we need to hear more from leaders like you and Brad and some of our participants today. You know, how do we approach that as an association? So I think great job today. Both of you. You really triggered a lot of thinking in myself. It's been a while since I sat in the principal chair, and I'm sitting here thinking, if I ever went back into that chair, how would I approach it now? Because it's a very, very different world than when I left it. And when you think about where principals are in the continuum of their experience, you know, a lot of new principals come into the principalship now embracing the ideas that you've talked about today. But what about that principal who may be mid-career or near the end of their career? You know, how do you breathe that life into these new ideas and make it okay to take that risk?
I'm going to share a like a 10-second story. Principal French on Twitter, a good friend of mine, Mark French, is one of the most inspiring leaders I've ever met, and sometimes he mistakenly says that I've mentored him, which I still don't get. I learned from him, and he is such a mentor to me. He's a past president of our state organization. He epitomizes learning, and he's later in his career. So I would push back to anyone who equates age and experience to a reticence to get connected. I mean, sometimes maybe they need an invitation or a relationship to take that first step, but in Mark's case now, we're all learning from him. Talk about the person you want leading your state, right? Mark is the person that you want leading a state or a country.
Absolutely.
And you brought up a good point. It's extending the invitation and you know, providing people, you know, with the supports that they need, you know, to embrace this new thinking. And I think it's so important for us to embrace the new thinking among ourselves as school leaders, but that filters down to what happens with kids every day.
So I just tweeted out Steve Seiler on Twitter at SJSIELLER. He is our giveaway winner. Woo! So we'll send me a DM, Steve, and we'll get that.
Give it up for Steve.
We want to thank everyone else for engaging with us. We'll be checking the Leadership Mashup hashtag, and Bill and I are the first to admit that we learn from you all, and so please help us keep learning. Let's stay connected, and I feel like we got another one of these coming up, don't we?
We do. In October to celebrate National Principals Month, please tell all your friends that are school leaders. We'll be back here for a mashup between NAESP and NASSP as we mash it up for school leaders to learn more. 2 books, 1 hour. Greatness is going to happen. Make sure you join us.
That's right. Taking things deeper, right? Thank you, Bill. Bill, it's been a pleasure. And Bill and I also want to thank NAESP and NASSP for your partnership and just breaking boundaries and helping us and leaders everywhere find this coherence and common ground, because it's all for the kids we serve.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, NAESP and NASSP. Hey, we look forward to connecting in October. Make sure you come back. Join us for the next mashup in October to celebrate National Principals Month.
I'll be there, Bill. Will you be there?
I'll be there.
Thanks, everyone.